Planning and Development Committee to order. The first thing on the agenda is approval of minutes from February 20th, 2024.
So moved.
Moved. Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. First item is the Red Spruce Wind presentation, and John, you're introducing? So
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as everybody knows by now, Nova Scotia is soliciting for more private wind energy development to reach our renewable energy targets. And there are two proponents in East Hants. Red Spruce project is one of them. And so we have with us today Jason Parise. He's the development director with SWEB Development. So he'll walk us through a bit more about their company and the Red Spruce project. I would just up front remind everyone that there is an East Hants approval process. It's site plan approval. So if this application is approved, I guess, by the province to go ahead, they will have to go through our process with notification to adjacent landowners and so on and receive site plan approval. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thanks.
thank you, John. Welcome, Jason, and you can begin.
Great, thanks, folks. I see there's about 20 minutes on the agenda for me, so I'll try to get through the slide deck fairly quickly to open for any questions. I'm Jason Parise, Development Director with SWEB Development. Been with the company for about 10 years, specifically here in Nova Scotia. So I oversee our wind energy development throughout Eastern Canada, Ontario, and then westward as well. Today, more specifically, I'll walk through just kind of 4 key items. Just a refresher on our company. I recall that I presented to council in 2021, so just a bit of a revisit to this project. Talk a bit about the Green Choice Program and future procurements that the province plans to host, an overview of the Red Spruce project timeline, and then I'll speak a bit about our First Nation partnership work that we're doing here in the province in light of this project and others in our portfolio. So just an overview of SWEB Development. We're a development, construction, operation, renewable energy group. We've been operating and developing in Nova Scotia since 2010. In Europe, our parent company's been operational for almost 30 years. A lot of our work is very community focused, so we have existing community partnerships in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Maine. As well, our headquarters is in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We also have an office in Natick, and then several offices in Europe, which I'll point to in the next slide. So currently we've built about 609 megawatts of wind, small-scale solar, and small-scale hydroelectricity in Europe. 609 megawatts is about as much wind as is built in Nova Scotia currently. We're active in, 8 countries, 2 continents. We have a little over 228 employees. We're kind of growing quite quickly in both North America and Europe. Our company is 100% community owned in Europe. So we have 8,300 investors, 6,500 of which are shareholders. And none of those shareholders have more than 3% of the company ownership. We're currently producing about enough electricity for a little over 1 million people between the 2 continents that we're active in. More specifically in Nova Scotia, and I'll talk a bit about the projects we operate here in the next slide, but here's just a sub-list of different community organizations and groups that we've contributed to since 2014 when we first became operational here in Nova Scotia. So there are a few community groups here that are within the East Hants geopolitical boundary that we work with on an annual basis. And all these different project sites in the following slide have what we call community liaison committees, and our active CLCs all receive monetary benefits from the projects here in Nova Scotia. So just starting from the top, we were the largest installer of community feed-in tariff projects here in Nova Scotia. So we built about 40 megawatts of wind projects across the province. They're shown here, 3 of which are basically within East Hants, North Beaverbank, 9 Mile River, and Harwood Lands. And then others are spread throughout the different municipalities, of course. We were also very successful in New Brunswick with our LaRest program project. It's the Wiskalumsum project, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And we've continued to develop wind and solar projects throughout the region, as well as battery storage, which is a technology that's starting to find its ground here in the Maritime region. Beyond that, we've partnered with a lot of First Nation communities in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Ontario. And the next project that I'll talk about is a more recent one that we built in southeastern New Brunswick. That was in partnership with Woodstock First Nation. We developed a bursary program in partnership with that community. So annually, we give out bursaries from the project that help First Nation students from the community to help sort of support them financially to get through university or college programs. As well, we're in the process of building a solar photovoltaic project within the community to help offset electricity payments. And this was the first project that was built in New Brunswick as part of the program. More recently, and this is a procurement that the Red Spruce project participated in 2022, our Weavers Mountain Wind Energy Project, which is in Pictou County, was awarded. It was one of 5 projects awarded back in 2022. It's a 94.4 megawatt wind project, 16 turbines. It's entirely located in Pictou County in terms of the turbines, but the substation and switchyard are in Antigonish County. It's kind of right on the border. This was developed in partnership with Glooscap First Nation. Glooscap Energy is an economic entity that they own and operate, and that's who we're partnered with on this project. We're planning to work with Glooscap again on the Red Spruce project here in 2024. And hope to have other First Nation partners join in as equity provider to the projects as well. This project specifically quite unique. There are capacity building initiatives that we developed with Scotia Winds of Change, which is an African Nova Scotian organization based out of Spryfield, just outside of Halifax. And the intention of that organization is to help support African Nova Scotians in terms of capacity building initiatives, academic initiatives, and so forth. And then our second beneficiary is Women in Renewable Energy, or WIRE. And that is another capacity support initiative where we work with women who are working within our industry to help support them with various initiatives that they have as an organization. We've also established a community liaison committee for the Weavers Mountain project, and that's operating currently, and I'm one of the members of that organization with other community members. So now just a quick glimpse at the program that we're looking to submit this project to, as well as the project itself. The Green Choice program is a new program similar to the rate-based program which preceded it. Its intention is to bring online another 350 megawatts of new wind energy in the province by 2028. It's focused on capacity building initiatives, benefits towards underrepresented communities, and it will enable universities, industrial users, hospitals, and so forth to purchase green electricity from Nova Scotia Power in lieu of traditional thermal sources. It's also very focused on First Nation partnerships, which is a really great product of renewable energy procurements currently. A lot of initiatives are focused on benefiting First Nation communities, which really helps to bring projects to the finish line. After the Green Choice program, what we're seeing from the provincial government is likely at least 1 or 2 more renewable energy procurements. So you will probably see more projects proposed and submitted within the region and throughout the province by 2030. The timeline on the right, I've highlighted just kind of 3 key things here. The proposal submission is June 14th. Evaluation period would follow throughout the summer. And the notification date of the winners of that procurement would be in September of this year. And then the contracts for that program would be executed by December. So a lot of these projects will be built in 2026, 2027, but have to be online by the end of 2028. The Red Spruce project, and I know I've presented this before, but the main change from 2021 is that we've added 3 more turbine pad areas or sites. This project's entirely located on Atlantic Star and Elmsdale Lumber lands. So 2 landowners we've engaged kind of more broadly within the community. We've hosted 2 public engagement sessions for this project, one in the fall 21, one in 2022. We're hosting another one this evening at the Rawdon Fire Hall. So our staff will be on hand from 4:30 to 8:30 to answer questions from the community. We've more broadly engaged via letter, mail, Facebook posts, our project website, so on and so forth. The project capacity will be roughly 108.8 megawatts, which is just the multiplicity of 6.8 times 16. It could be downsized depending on how we see it being fit into the bid process this year. Permitting wise, we're looking to file the EA, the environmental assessment for the project, in May or June. We've been conducting all the EA and Mi'kmaq ecological knowledge study work on site the last 2 years. The development permit and permit process through East Hants would be initiated in July of this year, so we need a lot of that environmental assessment information to do that. And beyond that, if this project is awarded through this procurement, we would start construction in June of 2026 and then finish by December of 2028. Typical project timeline is as follows. So we're sort of midway through everything in blue. We're very close to getting to the environmental assessment filing and so forth. The PPA award and things like that would occur this year as well. We've continued with our broader community engagement. We've continued with a lot of First Nation engagement in the province as well. And then if the project is successful again, it would start construction in June of 26, so about 2 years out from now. This is my last important slide, our proposed project partnership and benefits. So this project, among the others in our portfolio in Nova Scotia, none of the other projects are within East Hants, just for clarity. These will be majority-owned First Nation projects that we're submitting to the Green Choice Program. We hope to be able to release more information about the results of our partnerships in the next couple of months, and that will be posted to our project website as well. There'll be a positive impact on local businesses, as is quite common with wind projects in the region. There'll be tax revenue for East Hants, of course, similar to our other operational projects here in this region. Obviously, with new wind energy, we'll offset a lot of the carbon intensity of the grid here in Nova Scotia, and a portion of the project revenue will be put aside for the CLC that we'll be establishing in the next couple of months here. So that CLC will have ownership of those funds, and we'll be able to allocate them within the communities that have a vested interest in them. So that's basically just a quick snapshot of the project and an update for council and staff. My contact details are here. I'm in touch with Kim periodically, but also Kelly Ash from the planning group on a monthly basis to kind of continue with information sharing about the project and to keep her apprised of when we plan to submit our development permit for so forth. So yeah, happy to answer any questions you folks might have today. And if not today, I'm happy to follow up via email as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Any questions? Councilor Perry. Just a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, thank you very much for presentation. I really enjoyed that. I guess this question might go to John. On the map provided, it looks like in that region, that's the meeting of 3 different districts. I was wondering what the turbine breakdown was per district there. If you guys looked at that yet to see, according to the placement, because I believe that's going to hit District 9, 11, and 1.
Yeah,
not mistaken.
through you, Mr. Chair, we haven't looked at that yet.
Okay.
And the district boundaries are changing a little bit, so
Yeah.
I don't plan to do it as well.
Okay. Just trying to look at it from the CLC aspect of it, of how it can benefit. It's going to hopefully benefit 3 areas. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Next up, Councilor Eisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to the presenter. How many wind turbines do you have to have in one location when you're doing a project that makes it viable? It's a minimal, I should say.
Yeah, it's interesting. With these procurements, the procurement itself has a cap of 150 megawatts. The turbines that we've commissioned in this region of the province before were 2 megawatts each. Now they're in the range of 6.5 to 7.5 megawatts each. So we can get more out of a single turbine, almost 3 times as much as what we used to. So we use fewer pads, fewer access roads, et cetera. Because these are competitive procurements, typically with size, you have economies of scale, as I think everyone would understand well. So bidding a small project, let's say 20 megawatts or 3 or 4 turbines, wouldn't be as competitive as a project that has 15 or 16 or 20 turbines, which are all allowed in this procurement. The province has sort of pushed for larger projects to bring down the cost of electricity from the projects, making it a very competitive bid process. The biggest factor, though, to answer your question, would be the wind resource in a specific area. So if we're in Cumberland County or Cape Breton, very strong wind resource, you can still have a fairly competitive electricity price with fewer units because you're still producing more electricity and therefore more revenue. So that threshold sort of changes throughout the province, I would say.
And one more question, how close to residents can you be?
We are always beyond 1 kilometer from a residence in Nova Scotia as SWEB development, and we've done the same thing in New Brunswick as well. In a lot of cases, we're beyond 1.5 kilometers. In the Weavers Mountain project I showed earlier, that's beyond a kilometer and a half from any residence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason, I was just wondering, when wind turbines first come around, one of the big concerns were migrating birds. So now that you have quite a few projects around, has anybody done a study to see if indeed they are killing many birds, migrating? A lot of birds migrate through here. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately, I've been published in that field before, so I have a fair bit of knowledge about it. Generally speaking, any project in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, or in Canada, for that matter, that has more than that has ever undergone an environmental assessment has an obligation in the first 2 years of operation to do what's called post-construction mortality monitoring.
Right.
Anytime that a project exceeds a certain amount of birds per turbine unit, on average, adaptive management practices have to be employed at that project. So some of those might be during a migratory period, the project is shut down. So spring or fall, that can happen. The same sort of principles apply to bat mortality as well. So all of our projects in Nova Scotia that have had EAs had post-construction monitoring completed. We've never exceeded the thresholds, and those are put in place by provincial and federal government bodies, so CWS, Bird Studies Canada, and then Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change, for example, would collaborate on those thresholds. There probably are projects out there that have exceeded that in other parts of Canada, and all of those data points are publicly available. So those are published to CWS on an annual basis from every wind project in Canada that's monitoring those mortalities.
And any idea what species are most vulnerable?
Yeah, raptor species, so like hawks, eagles, so on and so forth, and that comes from typically habitat in the field below a turbine. So if there are rodents and things like that moving, it's an attractive thing, and it's when raptor species swoop down through and maybe come into contact with a blade or nacelle or a tower. That's the highest mortality component. For bats, it's what's called blunt force trauma. So if they're between a blade and a tower, there's a force in that area that causes implosion of lungs, which is a bit dark, but or it could be blunt force, or contact with the tower or so forth. Another component's been added the last 6 years. So all wind projects in Atlantic Canada have to conduct radar studies. So because turbines are taller from 150 meters upward, these radars will track movement of avian species during migratory periods, so spring and fall. That helps CWS to understand and quantify how much movement there is of birds in the blade swept area, because there is more movement higher up. So it helps us to quantify the risk associated with new projects.
Yeah, they're running into the blades higher up or...
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. And what are the limits? You said that there's limits set.
I only recall the New Brunswick limitations. It's 10 birds per turbine on an annual basis.
Wow, okay, so fairly low then.
Yeah.
Good, thank you very much.
Any house cat would kill more birds than that.
Right, yeah.
That's all, Councillor?
Yes.
Thank you. Nobody else wishing to comment or question, so I'll thank you, Jason, for the presentation
Great, thank you.
and wish you well going forward.
Certainly. And
Thank you,
we'll-
John.
We'll continue to keep council and staff apprised of the project, of course, but certainly appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I'd like to welcome our public members to committee today. It's good to see you while Debbie gets set up. Next item on the agenda is Planning 004 RYC Property Limited, redesignation or rezoning in Shubenacadie. You can begin, Debbie, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the applicant is RYC Property Limited. The location of the property is in Shubenacadie at the end of Havenwood Drive and is outlined here in red. So the subject property is currently zoned rural use. The adjoining properties on the north, south, and west are zoned rural use as well. And to the east here, we have Havenwood Drive, portion that's been developed, and that's zoned R2. And we also have a small little park here. That's a piece of open space owned by the municipality and is zoned open space. So the size of the subject property is 5.9 hectares. The proposal is to amend the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw by changing the generalized future land use designation from rural use RU to established residential neighborhood ER, and to rezone the same from rural use RU to 2-unit dwelling residential R2 zone. So the purpose of this application is to enable the extension of Havenwood Drive to allow for the construction of 47 semi-detached dwellings for a total of 94 dwelling units. Havenwood Drive had intended to be extended to allow for the continued development of the road. However, limitations with the Shubenacadie sewage treatment facility prevented the land from being further developed. And this is shown in our actual boundary for the growth management area for Shubenacadie. It goes to the very end of that property and then comes down again. Now that the new wastewater treatment facility is almost complete, development in Shubenacadie growth management area is expected to increase. So here is the concept plan for the proposed extension of Havenwood Drive. And so these lots here would all be our 2 lots, so would have a semi-detached on it. This is our open space parcel. There is a trail that goes through here, so there would be a trail alignment on the other side. And there is proposed road connections to the adjoining lands as well. And this turning T would go right to the edge of the property as well. Since the initial development of Havenwood Drive in the late 1980s, the subdivision bylaw regulations have changed. The developed portion of Havenwood is a public gravel road owned by the province. Under the current subdivision bylaw regulations, the proposed road extension will be a municipally owned paved road with a sidewalk. Therefore, in order to prevent the creation of another road gap issue, staff recommend that if the application is approved, bylaw F100 local improvement charges bylaw be used to pave the gravel portion of the Havenwood Drive. Policy analysis. So staff will be requesting comments from internal departments and external agencies, including but not limited to Nova Scotia Public Works, the Schenectady Regional Centre for Education, and Infrastructure and Operations. Policy IM11 is a policy that allows council to consider the proposed mapping amendments, and it permits council to consider private applications to amend the MPS where the proposed amendments are in the best interest of the municipality. Citizen engagement. An advertisement outlining the application and indicating that it had been received and was under review by staff was placed in the Chronicle Herald. A public information meeting is required for all amendments to the municipal planning strategy unless they are housekeeping in nature. And unless directed otherwise, a letter indicating the time and date of the public information meeting will be mailed to all property owners within 300 meters of the subject properties. And in accordance with our public information meeting policy, the public PIM would be held here at the municipal building. Additional advertising will be placed in the East Hants website and on our social media feeds. And down below here, we just have a flow chart showing where we are in the process. So we're at the initial staff report, a public information meeting is required, and then we'd go to another report for our initial reading, questionnaires sent to property owners, comments requested from internal departments and external agencies, staff evaluation, and then the public hearing. And recommendation is that Planning Advisory Committee recommends the council authorize staff to schedule a public information meeting, and the recommended motion is below. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Excuse me. First up to speak, Councilor Rhino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many currently reside on that road as it is right now? How many properties?
There are 23 lots that access Havenwood.
How many residences?
I didn't count the number of dwelling units, but there are 23 lots, and a further 77 lots could be subdivided from the road under our current subdivision bylaw regulations before they get to the 100 lot maximum.
So you don't know the number of dwelling units?
No, some of the units are apartment units, and so I haven't counted up the individual dwelling units yet.
I guess my concern lies with one access. Right, out of there. Now, our current bylaw states that it's lots, not units.
That's correct. So the subdivision bylaw allows for 100 lots to be off of one access, and that hasn't changed yet. And staff are going to be preparing a report for later this spring regarding the motion of council where they wanted to have another report to talk about dwelling units and access.
So if this process is now in the queue and that changes, would this process be grandfathered?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So this process is just for mapping amendments, the rezoning and the redesignations, not for a development agreement or anything like that. So when the applicant comes in to subdivide the lands, they'll have to follow whatever subdivision bylaw regulations are in effect. And when they come in for the building permits, they'll have to follow whatever regulations are in our land use bylaw. So if they change before the applicant applies for both the subdivision and the building permits, then they'd have to follow whatever we have in place at that point in time. So it just depends.
So what you're saying is, when this, or if this changes to units or dwelling units instead of lots, then at that time, he'll have, the proposal will have to follow, let's say it's 100 before, 100 units, and there's already, well, we don't know, because you said you don't know, but there's 23 lots there, so I don't know if any of those are duplexes or not. So that will cut down, could possibly cut down the number of units that will go in there, correct?
Yes, that's correct, and the applicant is aware of that.
He is?
Yes.
Okay. No, that was my concern with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Next up to Fee, Councilor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Councilor Rhino asked one of my questions, so we'll move on to the next. And I see we're going to attempt to get the rest of it paved if this development goes ahead, which makes sense. Now, how would is that going to be split up amongst the current property owners, or partially, or a percentage of it paid by them, or how will that be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'd have to use the local improvement bylaw and take a look at the frontages and look at who owns property on there. And there's, as I said, there's 2, I think, small apartment buildings that are owned by the province on there as well. And there's also a future development potential in one lot for another 1 or 2 semis. So we'd have to take a look at that and determine a method that would go forward for a petition for the council for consideration.
And another thing I see, there's a sidewalk on the new piece, which is great.
Yes.
So pavement and plus a sidewalk on the existing Havenwood to connect to the sidewalk. So
Yes, I
drove
imagine that's what we would do. It would only make sense to continue on with the sidewalk down to the end. And I should also mention that because it's a provincially owned road, I think there is, we get partial funding from the province in order to pave those gaps. I can't remember off the top of my head what the percentage is, but.
Okay. And of course, with the mentioned earlier, there's right at the end of the developed section of Havenwood now, there's quite a wetland area. When you walk the McGinnis Trail, you see it. People down there already have flooding problems and that. So I take it that the development proposal will address those or will limit the number of lots?
So what has to happen is that if the application moves forward and the mapping amendments are approved, that when the subdivision application is submitted, it's submitted for tentative subdivision approval first. And at tentative stage, you have to do a stormwater management plan. So the applicant will have to address how stormwater is managed on the site. And then that'll be reviewed by, and it has to be in accordance to our municipal standards, so that will be reviewed at that point in time. We don't have any zoning on there that shows any environmental zoning, like we don't zone for that use. So it's up to them to show us the stormwater management plans, and they have to design in accordance with our municipal standards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up to speak, Deputy Warden Green.
I'll move the recommended motion.
It's moved in second. On before the motion. Councilor Musa.
Thank you. So the open space that existed, that from the previous subdivision or?
Through, Mr. Chair, yes, it's from the previous subdivision. We have to do a little bit of research, and I wasn't able to do it prior today, but we'll have to do it just to determine what that accounted for at the point in time when that initial subdivision was completed, and to see if the developer would still owe additional subdivision open space, or if that fulfilled the requirement at the time. So we weren't able to initially find an open space agreement, so we just have to do a little bit more research to see if we can track it down through our documents.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rhino.
Yes, through you to staff, can you go over that cost shared program? You'd mentioned that to Councillor McPhee. Could you give me a quick breakdown on that cost shared program, how that will be administered for the rest of that street?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so it's through the local improvement charges bylaw, and it allows for the developer would be required to pay for a portion of the upgrades to the road, and then there'll be a portion of it broken down for each individual property owner that's already there on the road, and then there's a portion that the province pays. 50% is what the CAO is saying, so.
So the developer and who? The property, the
The existing
adjoining
property owners would pay a
owners?
portion of it, most likely, because they'd be receiving a benefit from the improvements of the road.
Properties, and then the other is paid by
The province,
the province.
yeah, and.
Now, do we kick in portion of that?
Yeah, 10%?
There's another report
10?
coming,
I thought it was 10.
there's another report coming this afternoon to talk about this very
Yeah,
issue, but,
For right now,
it's 10%
before that report, what would we pay? 10%?
municipality, 50% provincial, and then a local improvement on the rest, how council wants to divide it.
Yeah.
So you have different options to divide. You can divide by frontage, you can divide equal amount per lot. You
Yeah.
can, there's different ways you can do that, and that would be a council decision if you weren't doing it through a petition.
But the municipal portion would be paid through the roads reserve,
Yeah,
through the general rate, correct?
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor and CEO.
Question.
Nobody left to speak. Questions being called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the land use bylaw housekeeping amendments. Debbie, go ahead when you're ready.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So since the adoption of the 2023 planning document, staff have identified a missing provision from the new rural use north RU-2 zone that prevents a portion of sections 9.5 and 9.6 of the subdivision bylaw from being used in the rural use north zone. It's just an oversight on our end. Staff are proposing a housekeeping amendment that would fix the current issue, and it's below there at 5.5.7, and it's regarding area of land provisions. We've also identified 7 other housekeeping items that can be addressed at this time through the land use bylaw amendments. The majority of the proposed amendments are extremely minor in nature and do not impact the intention of the regulations. For example, we missed a reference to the proposed FF and the FE zone, so just remove those from the chart. We used the wrong word in a couple instances, say instead of in, accessory to should be in one of our provisions. We've also identified some spelling errors, consistency issues, and a wrong word usage. All the proposed amendments have been attached in the staff report if you'd like to look at them in detail, and staff have followed the citizen engagement policies outlined in the community plan, and a notice advising advertising the date and time of the public hearing for the land use bylaw housekeeping amendments have been advertised in the March 13th and will go in the March 20th editions of the Chronicle Herald on the East Hants website and on the East Hants social media platforms. And recommendation is the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the council give second reading and approve the proposed land use bylaw housekeeping amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. First up to speak, Councilor Perry.
I'll move the recommended motion.
Moved in second. Anybody else wishing to speak? Questions being called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is motion C-22, bracket 350, paving petitions. Ms. Andrews?
You decide. Yeah, you can go anywhere you want.
Let's just stand there. You can start when you're ready.
It's just
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This motion, C-22-350 on the paving petition report. Just a quick note for PAC, the original report and presentation was posted on Friday, and an amended report and presentation was posted on Monday regarding the reserve amounts in the report. In October 2022, Council considered a report from staff on whether developers should continue to be permitted to construct public gravel roads. Council opted not to amend the subdivision bylaw and passed motion C-22-350 that Council authorized staff to bring a report reviewing the paving petition policy and possible incentives options for both developers and residents to pave their current public gravel roads. Currently, bylaw F-100 local improvement charges bylaw requires a paving petition be initiated by 2 or more residents on a gravel road. Many times, these petitions fail and the local improvement does not occur. Other municipalities in the province have different methods for paving public gravel roads. The current procedure under bylaw F-100 begins with at least 2 owners of properties subject to the petition requesting one or a motion from council directing staff to initiate a petition. The request must include a description of the proposed local improvement, method of charge, and charge area. A petition package is then prepared with the request, the total estimated cost, the cost per property, the financing options, and a letter explaining the local improvement process, giving each property owner the opportunity to vote yes or no for the local improvement. After 30 days, if at least 2/3 of the total properties are in favor of the local improvement, then it is considered a successful petition and the local improvement is implemented. If the petition is not successful, the road cannot be petitioned again for 3 years. This is a flow chart just describing the petition process. The petition is requested, the petition package is distributed, and the 30-day voting period happens. If 2/3 of the property owners vote yes, the local improvement is implemented. If less than 2/3 vote yes or there's no response, the petition fails and then after 3 years elapse, then the petition can be requested again. In some municipalities in Nova Scotia, they take a different approach regarding the paving of public roads. In the District of Lunenburg, as of 2017, the requirement of a paving petition has been removed from the road improvement policy, and the new policy allows council to directly invest in paving municipal gravel roads through a prioritization process. It was unclear the amount that the resident pays in Lunenburg. Their policy has retained the option of a petition if property owners on a gravel road wish to advance a municipal or provincially cost-shared road for improvement. In the Halifax Regional Municipality, a gravel road paving program is under evaluation by municipal staff. In 2016, revisions to the local improvement charge policy resulted in the elimination of the petition requirement and lowered the local improvement charge for residents from 50% to 33.33%, leaving 66.66% to the municipality. HRM staff submit to council a prioritized list out of the remaining gravel roads based on criteria such as traffic volume, existing road condition, and the cost benefit of paving. HRM has a significantly larger inventory of municipal gravel roads, 63 as of 2017, and has paved 15 of them since 2017 under this program. There's a framework set by the Road Gap Paving Project that could be applied to paving existing public gravel roads in East Hants. Each year, there's $20,000 set aside in the Transportation Paving Reserve. After the Road Gap Paving Project is complete, there will be $200,000 remaining in the reserve. The same charge models where property owners are charged based on 3 categories, based on their access to the subject road, could be applicable. 3 draft motion options are provided with this report. The first 2 options propose removing the paving petition requirement and to create a road prioritization list. The ability to undertake a paving petition is proposed to be maintained where a gravel road is not proposed to be paved that year. The amount of municipal contribution and recommended financial amount to be added to the reserve budget is different in both options and is summarized as follows. In option 1, to amend the municipal contribution for road paving from 10 to 20%, and pending a successful bylaw change, increase paving reserve budget in future fiscal years from $20,000 to $120,000. In option 2, amend the municipal contribution amount for road paving from 10 to 30%, and pending a successful bylaw change, increase paving reserve budget in future fiscal years from $20,000 to $200,000. And option 3 is to maintain the current local improvement charges bylaw. Currently, there are 8 public gravel roads in East Hants with no current plans for paving by property owners or developers. The length of these roads total 4.85 kilometers. These roads are both fully municipal and partially municipal with provincially owned sections. Roads with partial ownership would be eligible for the cost-sharing agreement with Provincial Public Works pending funding. The approximate total cost of paving all existing municipal gravel roads would be $3.92 million, based on a cost estimate from the Road Gap Paving Project. Under the current 10% contribution model, the approximate cost per property owner ranges between $9,636 and $26,148. The total municipal cost would be approximately $391,468. All current public gravel roads are outside the serviced area, which makes the per property cost very expensive due to the larger frontages. In February 2024, Council passed a motion to maintain developers' ability to construct new municipal gravel roads outside GMAs and GRAs. The municipality bears the future cost of maintaining these roads. Following the jurisdictional scan, staff analyzed what a 66.6 contribution by the municipality of paving municipal gravel roads would look like. If the municipality pays the lion's share of the cost of paving, this will discourage developers from constructing paved roads and would push the cost of development onto the general tax rate. For the information of PAC, an analysis of the municipality contributing 66.6 of the paving costs, the same as in HRM, has been included in the staff report, but staff do not recommend this approach. If the municipal contribution remains at 10%, it would cost the municipality approximately $400,000 to pave the current gravel roads. This could be achieved over 5 years by adding $40,000 to the reserves per year, in addition to the existing paving reserve. If council selects option 1, paving the gravel roads would cost the municipality close to $800,000 a year. This could be achieved over 5 years by adding $120,000 to the reserves per year in addition to the existing paving reserve. If council selects option 2, paving the gravel roads would cost the municipality close to $1.2 million. This could be achieved by adding $200,000 to the reserves per year in addition to the existing paving reserve. The reserve amounts per year could be reduced by increasing the time period of the project from 5 years. So the next few tables depict the 10%, 20%, and 30% contribution models. So the municipal contribution under 10% is $391,000. The residence portion is a little over 3.5 million. 20%, the municipal contribution goes up to 782,000, almost 783,000, and the resident contribution drops to 3.13 million. Under 30%, the municipal contribution goes up to 1.17 million, and the resident falls to 2.74 million. The recommendation is that direction be given to staff based on one of the three options outlined in the report. The Planning Advisory Committee, option 1, recommends to council that council authorize staff to begin the process of amending the local improvement charges bylaw to allow for an increased municipal contribution amount for road paving from 10 to 20% and remove the paving petition requirement, but maintain an option for a petition if a gravel road is not listed to be paved that year, and pending successful bylaw change, increase paving reserve budget in future fiscal years from $20,000 to $120,000, and direct staff to prepare a road prioritization list for direct investment from paving reserves. Option 2 is that Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that council authorize staff to begin the process of amending the local improvement charges bylaw to allow an increased municipal contribution amount for road paving from 10 to 30% and remove the paving petition requirement, but maintain an option for petition if a gravel road is not listed to be paved that year, and pending a successful bylaw change, increase paving reserve budget in future fiscal years from $20,000 to $200,000, and direct staff to prepare a road prioritization list for direct investment from paving reserves. And option 3 is to maintain the bylaw as it is right now, the local improvement charges bylaw. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. First up to speak, Councilor Rhino.
Okay, so currently the 10% comes out of general rate, correct? So you're asking the options have 20 and 30% increase?
That's right.
Well, I'm gonna know what my people are gonna say. No, sir, no way. Why would I be paying more on my general rate to pave a road that I'll never travel on when we still have gravel roads in our area that we're never gonna get paved? That's what my people will say. So to me, the only option 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Next up to speak, Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. There's been plenty of paving petitions done in my area over the number of years, and most of them seem to fail. And one of the biggest points of contention is if somebody does not return their vote, it's automatically counted as a no. Why is that? Why is it not counted as a yes, and somebody has to vote no?
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe there is something in the MGA that requires a no response to be counted as a no for a vote.
Yeah, because that's been the bone of contention for a lot of people is that, you know, if most people will look at it and it doesn't say that on there, and they're like, oh, they want to pave it, I don't care, and they throw it away and they don't vote, and then it fails, and those same people complain because they're like, well, I didn't say no. So that was a big point of contention. I don't know if there's anything we can do to look into that, but if it's in the MGA, probably not. My next question is, we've done a 5-year analysis here of how long it takes to pay this off. So over that 5 years, how much if those roads were paved, and I believe this is going to end up going to you, Jesse, the gravel road maintenance costs we're currently paying to maintain these gravel roads every year. I remember seeing for every kilometer of gravel road, it was quite substantial. So for these kilometers of roads that we currently have, in the 5 years it would take to pay for this, what would the cost of maintenance be over those 5 years? Yeah.
I would refer to the Director of Infrastructure and Operations.
Go Go ahead, Director.
Through Mr. Chair, I don't have a number on that. I'd have to poll staff that have that in a document. I was hoping someone would be watching online and ping me a number, but I don't have one. It's going to take some time.
Because I know the maintenance, once the road is down, the maintenance over time is much less for a paved road than a gravel road. And if we kind of understand that over 5 years it's this much, and then over 20 years it's this much, we can, kind of quantify that initial investment, that if all of a sudden we look at it and we say, yeah, if we do this now, and it goes in the general tax rate, but over the next 20 years, it's gonna be way less on the general tax rate than doing gravel maintenance every year, and you can look at it that way. And that's definitely a number that I would like to see in comparison, because going forward, again, that's what we're looking for. There's lots of roads and lots of areas, and the other thing I believe that we stopped paying the municipal portion if it's a provincial road. Because the last paving petition that I know, if it's a provincial road, they get the provincial one. We don't do the municipal on top of the provincial roads anymore. We just do the municipal one for our road. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay, yeah. So it's 50% if it's a provincial road, the residents would share, and it's 90-10 for residents to the municipality the other way. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up to speak, the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to your question about the price of the road maintenance, I think that was addressed last month in the report, and the difference was significant over the life cycle of those 8 kilometers of roads. I think it was probably 2 million-ish. And I guess before you asked that question, what my microphone was on for was to remind councillors that these reports are kind of coming a little bit offset, because this report was asked for, but then in the interim, you've already decided that you're going to allow for more gravel roads to be built outside of the growth management area. So if you're going to allow for those roads to be built, it doesn't make sense that you would then turn around and tell people you're going to pay for them to be paved. So I guess from a council perspective, option 3, based on your decision last month, is really your only logical option. That's not to say that can't be your only option, but to be consistent with your decisions of last month to allow these gravel roads to be built, and you basically said, we recognize that it costs more to maintain them, and we're okay with that because we want the development, and that gets paid for on the general rate. The decision to then turn around and pave them would be inconsistent in my opinion. So I just wanted to point out, had we had the reports in different order, your decisions may have looked a little bit different.
Does that answer your question, Councilor Perry?
Almost. I did have one other question that, thank you for the CEO for reminding me of that. And I know we're not going to have the answer, but right now we have roughly 8 kilometers of road, but we have a lot of approved development, which will increase this number quite dramatically over the next number of years, if I'm not mistaken. Does anybody have a care
That
to
would be
guess?
development in outside the growth management areas.
Outside the growth management areas, right?
That's
We-
approved?
Yeah, that's approved.
I believe there's only one road under a preliminary subdivision approval that would be gravel, that's proposed to be gravel right now.
Okay.
That's in kind of rural areas of by rotting some wires, but I'm not sure if anybody else is actually proposing
Okay.
a public gravel road at this point.
Okay, no, I just wanted to know, because, this is, I totally get what the CAO is saying, right? And I didn't agree then with continuing to allow gravel roads in a lot of areas. We needed to tweak that, in my opinion, but I do think that 10% is not enough incentive for our residents, because the cost of maintaining gravel roads we've seen last month is exponentially higher. And it's not good fiscal responsibility for the taxpayer to allow roads to be built that are going to cost them more over the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up to speak, Deputy Warden Green.
Well, I'm going to move option 3.
It's moved in second. Nobody left to speak.
Question.
Question being called. We'll go to vote. And the motion is passed, 9-2 with Councilor McPhee and Councilor Perry voting nay. Thank you. Last item on the agenda, second is stormwater management, flood services, areas. Debbie, you can begin when you're ready.
Yeah, Logan was going to come down with me. Logan is our project engineer, and he's going to answer any technical questions you may have about stormwater management for us today. Try to.
Welcome, Logan.
So during their October 2023 council meeting, council passed a motion directing staff to write a report regarding stormwater management in unserviced areas of East Hants and provide options for council's consideration. A stormwater system is defined in the subdivision bylaw as any drainage system, whether above or below ground, constructed to collect, control, and transport stormwater from the area of land being subdivided to a point of discharge. Currently, there are a few different land use scenarios that trigger the requirement for a developer to complete a stormwater management plan. So the subdivision bylaw is one of those, and Part 12, stormwater management of the subdivision bylaw, requires stormwater management plans to be completed for tentative plans of subdivision in the growth management areas and growth reserve areas where more than 3 lots or 2 lots and a remainder lot are being created. A tentative plan of subdivision is required when a new road is being constructed. So Part 12.12 of the subdivision bylaw also requires all land that is subdivided and drains into the 9 Mile River to have a stormwater management plan, no matter if there's a tentative plan of subdivision required or not. Part 12 of the subdivision bylaw outlines in detail when and what kind of stormwater management system is required. Stormwater design standards are included in the municipal standards, and municipal engineers confirm if a stormwater management plan has been designed per those municipal standards. So another time that a stormwater management plan may be required is during site plan approval. So depending on the zone and the use of the land, stormwater management plans may be required under some site plan approval criteria identified in the land use bylaw. Stormwater management plans in these situations are required to control stormwater at a particular development site and may not take into consideration the greater community. The stormwater management plan would have to be prepared and accepted before the development officer approves site plan approval for that property. Not all site plan approvals require a stormwater management plan. So in other situations for a development agreement, in some instances, a stormwater management plan or a preliminary stormwater management plan may be required during negotiations for a development agreement. For instance, during the negotiations for a walkable comprehensive development district lands, a preliminary stormwater plan is required at the subdivision stage, and the detailed stormwater management plans are required at tentative plan of subdivision. And that's because we're looking at such large parcels of land, they can only do a preliminary stormwater management plan until they can get in there and do detailed surveying. Other development agreements for individual development sites may require detailed stormwater management plans as part of the terms of the development agreement. Therefore, a detailed stormwater management plan would have to be prepared and accepted before a development officer issues a development permit for the proposed use of the land. And a development agreement for land located outside of a growth management area or a growth reserve area may contain a requirement for a stormwater management plan to be completed. For example, if there was proposed development in the Maitland area for 200 homes or for a resort type development, the council could request that a stormwater management plan be created for that development agreement if a development agreement was required. Municipal standards. So in the previous situations, all required stormwater management plans have to be prepared by the municipal standards. The municipal standards require that stormwater management systems are designed by a professional engineer, and major stormwater systems have to be designed to carry runoff from a 1-in-100-year storm. Data for the 1-in-100-year storm event can be updated through updates to the municipal standards. All right, and then we have Bylaw P1200, Lot Grading Drainage Bylaw. The purpose of the Lot Grading Drainage Bylaw is to manage the drainage of water on individual lots so as not to have a negative impact on the subject properties or adjoining lands. The bylaw was adopted in 2006 and is only applicable to lands located in serviced growth management areas. Staff are not recommending that the lot grading and drainage bylaw be extended to areas outside of the service GMAs at this time. Lots located where there are no municipal services tend to require a large area of land due to septic system requirements, thereby reducing the potential impact to neighboring lands. So under the current regulations, any developer constructing a new road outside of a growth management area or growth reserve area is not required to submit a stormwater management plan except for land adjacent to the 9 Mile River. It may be difficult for residents in areas outside of the growth management areas and growth reserve areas who feel they are experiencing stormwater-related issues on their properties to prove their concerns. Since there are no stormwater management plans required, the municipality also has little recourse if an issue arises. I should mention that we are not the only ones that may require stormwater management plan. In some situations, Nova Scotia Environment or Nova Scotia Public Works can require stormwater management plans, but they're usually looking at those plans from a different perspective than what the municipality would have. They would be taking in, like Public Works would be taking into consideration their own infrastructure, not necessarily what the impacts would be on neighboring property owners. Not requiring stormwater management plans also mean that the developer may not take into consideration how the construction of a new road may impact adjacent properties or downstream properties. If council decides to require stormwater management plans for new developments in other areas of East Hants, it will be an extra expense for the developer. However, staff feel that the protection of neighboring property owners outweighs the cost to the developer. We've looked at the Halifax stormwater regulations, and they use different language from East Hants in their subdivision bylaw to regulate stormwater management. However, a drainage plan and stormwater management system are required for all subdivisions where new streets are created, and this includes both public and private streets located anywhere within the municipality, so this is applicable to Halifax. So proposed amendments. In order to extend the requirement for stormwater management plans to be undertaken in all areas of East Hants, staff recommends amending the subdivision bylaw to include a provision that all roads in the municipality, whether public or private, will require a stormwater management plan to be submitted with the engineering documents for a tentative plan of subdivision. Staff will draft proposed amendments if council decides to proceed with the recommendation, and a public information meeting is required for amendments to the subdivision bylaw. There are two alternatives for council to consider. The first one is to make no changes to the subdivision bylaw in requiring changes to requiring stormwater management plans. And number two is to require stormwater management plans for all tentative plans of subdivision for lands located in the country residential CR zone, the lakeshore residential LR zone, the established residential neighborhood R1 zone, and the 2-unit dwelling R2 zone. So that wouldn't take into consideration your rural use north zone, and I believe that's where some of the issues have been occurring. Recommendation, authorize staff to start the process of amending the subdivision bylaw to require stormwater management plans for tentative plans of subdivision in all areas of the municipality and for all road types, and authorize staff to hold a public information meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. First up to speak, Councilor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jesse, I asked you that question earlier. I was mixed up with the report, so I'm going to ask it to John now. So, to me, it doesn't matter which zone it is, we should protect the neighboring property evenly. Like, they are all invest in their property, and I don't think anybody should be able to create a road network that end up on somebody else's property. It's got to end up in a proper ditch, in a proper waterway, or something like that. To be able to, like, I give you an example, the business park. If that business park didn't have the ditches on Highway 1, that would flood half the property around it, because the water coming after. I remember before the business park was there was hardly any water in the ditches. And after the business park, you could walk all Highway 1 and you see there's not enough water running, and while you have a big river running from the business park towards Sackville. So that should give us an example that we should be protecting all the properties. It doesn't matter if it's in growth management area or outside the growth management area, because every property means something to their owners. And as a municipal entity, we should protect everybody. And for that, I'm gonna move that recommended motion, like the Planning Advisory Committee recommend that council authorize staff to proceed with amending the subdivision bylaw to require stormwater management plan for tentative plans of subdivision for all areas of the municipality and all road types, and authorize staff to hold a public information meeting.
Moved in second. Thank you, Counselor. On before the motion. Counselor Rhino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, did I hear that this wouldn't apply to the Hants North rural, the northern rural use zone?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that was one of the alternatives. So the current motion would apply to all land outside of all growth management areas and growth reserve areas. The alternative motion was to apply to the CR zone, the LR zone, R1 and R2 zone outside of the GRAs and GMAs, but it wouldn't apply to the rural use north zone. So that was just an option.
But this would.
Yes, this would.
This motion,
Yeah.
well, I can understand the thought of it. But in our area, we need to encourage growth. I.e., we'd love to see a small development, so small subdivision come in. I guess my concern lies with the fact that we're adding another cost to the developer if he ever come in to try to do that here. So, while you're trying to encourage something, it just seems that it may work against us for what we're trying to do. However, I understand the thought behind it, so I don't know right now, like, if I'm gonna support that or not. Thank you.
If I could just, and Logan might be able to help me here. So when you do a tentative plan of subdivision, whether it's for a public road or a private road, you have to prepare engineered drawings, and I don't know how much additional cost it may add to the.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, it would likely depend on the complexity of the subdivision. A lot of the components of the stormwater management plan are already considered in design when considering road grading, ditch grading, etc. It's more or less formalizing what's been considered already. And cost-wise, you know, some homeowners, provided, you know, flooding did occur, can see substantial costs incurred.
May, Mr. Chair?
That answer your question, or you
I'd
follow
like
up?
to, I'd like to call follow up.
Go ahead.
So if some developer wanted to come in and create a 12 lot subdivision, let's say Urbania area, then this stormwater management is already in there for a plan is already in there before they can get approval?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, that's not what Logan was saying. He's saying that some of the items required for our stormwater management plans are already considered, because you have to look at the grading of the road, because your road has to be designed either to public road standards or it has to be designed to a public road standard. So I don't know what the technical.
So it's considered during the general design process rather than what's currently stipulated in our standards or bylaws.
So if this person was gonna put in a private, small subdivision for 12 lots, he would, under this current motion, and then they would still have to get an engineer and get to do a plan for this.
Correct, yes.
Whereby if this motion didn't pass, they wouldn't have to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not necessarily from us, but it's possible that other entities would require a stormwater management plan.
Like I said, I can see the theory behind it, but I just think it has the potential to be a roadblock for any development that we so badly need down the road. So I still don't know what I'm gonna do yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the motion for the simple reason is if any, no matter what size development goes in, the people who are there should have the right to not be impacted. And this stormwater management plan is the only thing we can do to protect the residents that are currently there. I totally understand where Councilor Rhino's coming for, trying to get development in. But if I understand it correctly, whether it's a private road to our private road standards or a public road, they all have to be engineered roads. So the engineer's hired anyway. They've done so much of the work, and then to make a stormwater plan is just building on the work they've already done. So I see this as an added sub-cost, not just a new cost. So I'm okay with that. The item that I was on before the motion was done is one of the things that I think goes along with this, which is an issue, is lot grading plans. We don't require a lot grading plan outside of the serviced area. So no matter where you live, right, I could move next to Councilor Rhino, and if we're on flat ground, I could bring in 1,000 loads of topsoil and build my property higher. So now I drain all my water onto his property, and there's nothing to stop me from doing that in any area right now, right? I believe that a proper lot grading plan needs to be put in, as well as this motion here, to protect residents in all zones of the municipality from being negatively impacted by any development, whether it's an existing house pulling in fill or anybody else doing anything. Any alteration to your land can affect your neighbors severely and can cause massive issues. And the only recourse that is currently there, the only recourse that's there now when this happens is to hire a lawyer, right? Because we don't have anything to say that this is required. And I believe we need to empower the residents to help protect them. So at least if it does end up in court, they would have had to produce something before this to show that. So it can work both ways for both people. So I don't know if I need to make an amendment to this motion or I need to make a separate motion.
Through Mr. Chair, a separate motion would probably be the best, and then I could take them in two different reports if necessary.
Okay. I'll wait and I'll make a separate motion. But that's what I believe, because to go along with this, it's all fine and great to have a plan to catch your stormwater off your roads. But if everybody just keeps dumping water from house to house, you have the same issue as what will be coming off the road. And as we've seen, flooding doesn't just happen in built up areas. Just down the road, just outside of East Hants, Eller's house. 4 people lost their lives in flooding in the rural community, right? So this is not something that's just unique to a built up area with lots of concrete and lots of dwellings. This could happen anywhere. So we need to make sure that the land that's being developed and where people are living, the water has a place to go in a safe manner for everybody to continue to enjoy their properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Deputy Warden Green.
I don't have anything to say. Councillor Perry said it all.
Thank you, Counselor Perry, for helping out the Deputy Warden. Counselor Garden Cole, you're free to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to add on to what Councillor Perry was saying, I think that the lot grading, similar to the stormwater management, is going to take place to a certain extent anyway. At any place that's being built, it would just be continued on to be, the criteria to be a little more stringent. So I think that as I was speaking about, earlier, affecting neighbors or just it's just good practice. And I'm in support of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rhino.
Through your staff. So currently, what Councillor Perry has said right there, let's say somebody wanted to come in and create, whether it's beside me or whoever, then they can build their properties up and that's allowable to shed water off without some.
Through Mr. Chair, yes. So the bylaw P1200 lot grading drainage is only applicable to the serviced areas of the municipality. And so if somebody outside of the serviced areas brought in fill and built it up and it had ended up draining onto your neighbor's property, it becomes a civil matter between the two property owners.
So with that, now then it becomes a municipal bylaw. And then it's taken care of, it would take it out of the hands of a civil matter, correct?
Mr. Chair, if this motion gets passed and then Council Perry presents the other motion and you move forward with amending your bylaw, then it could be put in there that they'd have to prepare a lot grading drainage plan for all new dwellings or additions. I think the bylaw stipulates for any new building or additions to existing buildings, you require a lot drainage and grading plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Question being called, but I have two left to.
Oh, I'm on.
Counselor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm in favor of this motion, and I just want to say that the situation that Councillor Perry outlined of the neighbor building up their land and dumping the water on the neighbor happened to me. I was the neighbor that got the water, and we didn't go to the courts. I just simply did dig a ditch and that, but I assume the person hadn't been able to just build up the lot and dump the water on me. It caused me quite a bit of problems, flooding my basement at the time. And anyway, rather than have bad neighbors, I just took care of it, but not everybody's going to do that. So that is the problem that can develop. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to do a clarification on the civil issue. Our lot grading bylaw does a good job of making sure when a subdivision is built that it's graded properly so that houses shouldn't interfere with each other, putting water into each other's basements and so on. But there could still be a civil issue after a subdivision is built if somebody goes in later and actually changes those established grades. So we still can see civil issues after the fact, but it does a much better job up front of making sure grades are established properly.
Follow up, Counselor Rhino?
No, I just want to follow up.
Go ahead.
So then if the lot grading goes ahead, is Counselor Perry, that wouldn't just pertain to subdivisions, that would pertain to single lots anywhere?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can tell you how it works right now in the serviced area, and I'm not saying that that's exactly what we would do in an unserviced area. You know, the lots are a lot bigger. It may look at it a little bit differently. But the way it works here is that you, when a new subdivision is proposed, you prepare a subdivision grading plan. An engineer has to do that.
Yeah.
And then when each individual building permit is taken out, there has to be a lot grading plan prepared that matches the subdivision grading plan. If it's just an individual lot, then there's no subdivision grading plan, but you still have to prepare a lot grading plan for that lot.
So if, let's say, we got one lot, somebody wanted to sell a lot down along the shore there, just one building lot, and it passed for perk tests and all that, then they come in here, they would still have this, if this goes through, then that would have forced them to do the lot grading plan and take care of that water issue?
Through
For
you,
single lot and a subdivision?
yeah, they're two different things. So the subdivision approval is separate from
Yeah,
the lot
I understand
grading.
that, but what I'm trying to get is what Councilor Perry is proposing over there, or will propose.
So, well, my understanding of that second motion would deal with having us look at including the unserviced area in the lot grading bylaw. And so if we do that, we'll go away and prepare a report. And we may look at regulations that mirror what we do in the serviced area, or might be slightly different, but that's for discussion at that time.
All right, thank you.
Questions being called, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. That concludes PAC for.
No.
Oh. Sorry, Counselor Perry. Go ahead.
I move that that we, recommends to council, to staff, to prepare a report on a lot grading plan in the on-serviced area
I'll second that.
to include subdivisions and individual properties.
Just moved in second. Any discussion?
Question.
Questions being called, we'll go to the vote. And that motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone, staff and councilors, for completing the committee. I want to thank the two public members for joining us this afternoon, and motion for adjournment and break,
Till 3:05, Graham's on his way here.
and come back at 3:05 for regular meeting of council, policy, and in-camera meeting.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. The committee held its regular meeting on March 19th, 2024, and the following policy-related motions coming forward. Budget Management Policy. The Corporate Residential Services Committee considered recommending changes to the budget management policy with the addition of Section 10, directing staff on the D-transfer tax draft budget each year per the recommendation by staff, and that the policy
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to read like almost to the end. The Uniac District and the Rural Fire Department rates be reduced by 1 cent? Is that what meant?
No, the rural fire department rates are reduced by 1 cent. As per the,
Provide growth management grants to Mount Uniac
Yeah.
and reduce the rural by 1 cent.
it's a chart we did this morning that shows the grant to Mount Uniac, the grant to the urban service rate.
Yeah,
and
but
the
it
rurals.
said the Uniac District and the Rural Fire
Yeah,
Department.
growth management grants to the corridor and Uniac districts, and the rural fire department rates be reduced by 1 cent.
Here, if you read here, the Uniac District and the Rural Fire Department rates.
But it's, these two here are the grants, and then there's a second and, the rural fire department rates be dropped by 1 cent.
Okay,
Happy there, Counselor?
I thought something wrong there, but
Are there English places where there should be a comma? Make it
Probably.
pause,
probably, yeah.
and reduce the rural.
And the Rural Fire Department should be no comma there, like, that's what tricked me off.
issues with one motion coming forth. Councillor Garden Cole. I'll run the buttons, Councillor.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I move that council award a grant of up to $55,000 from the Urban CCBF, formerly known as Gas Tax Reserve, to the Enfield, Elmsdale, and District Lions Club Pickleball Court Project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. That concludes the business. Be looking for a motion to adjourn. Have a seconder? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned.